Ham the chimp was America's first space explorer. Buzz Aldrin was one of the first men to walk on the moon. Sometimes there might be an advantage to being last. Harrison Schmitt piloted the last lunar lander on Apollo 17. There he is, the last moon mission. So he and Gene Cernan were the last two of the 12 men who walked on the moon. And Mr. Schmitt's a PhD geologist, former United States Senator from New Mexico, and has continued to be very active in space policy. Jack, nice to see you again.
David.
Now, you guys were out there, you were just on the moon for a little short of a day, and you only spent a couple of hours plus out there on the surface, right? These guys lived up there.
I know.
Right?
We basically established a base for 3 days.
3 days, and over 22 hours exploring.
Outside the spacecraft.
Outside. Tell us what you did out there, Jack, and we'll be able to look at it. Tell us what you did and what you learned.
We had an absolutely fantastic time being both astronauts and geologists simultaneously. We explored a major part of one of the most magnificent valleys I think one could find anywhere, the Valley of Taurus-Littrow, 7,000 feet deep, only about 4 miles wide, deeper than the Grand Canyon, which is one thing that's hard to envision, that we landed right in the middle of that valley. And we also put, I think, the final touches on a general understanding of the moon that came from Apollo, a scientific understanding. We really know the various phases now that the moon went through in its evolution as a small planet, and as a result, we know about the early history of the Earth that we did not know before we went. A lot of people forget that. Even geologists forget that we didn't know much about the early history of the Earth when we went to the moon, but by understanding the moon, which stopped being very active 3 billion years ago, we in turn began to understand the Earth.
All right. You found, as I recall, orange. You saw orange, right? What did that tell you?
We had one particular location that we thought might be a volcano or an impact crater. And in thinking about that, we thought we might see some color, because most people who have seen a volcano, Flagstaff or somewhere like that, have seen that there's color associated with it. Well, we stumbled across this orange soil in what was the rim of an impact crater. So it was a little bit of both, and that kept us surprised and interested for quite a while. It turned out to be volcanic debris, pyroclastic we call it, but volcanic debris like one would find around the fire fountains on the island of Hawaii.
How much have we learned from the rocks? You brought back, what, 250
Yeah, we brought back 250 pounds in contrast to the 80 pounds from Apollo 11, but we had a lot more time to collect them.
Sure.
And from those samples and the observations and the photographs and other data that was collected during that period, we really did begin to decipher not only the history of the moon, but what the moon was like internally. How was it layered? Was there a core? How did it evolve over time? And maybe most importantly for the future, we found it has energy resources that may be very important to us in the not-too-distant future.
We've got a call. Don from Louisiana. Hi, Don.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing good.
Great. What's your question?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Aldrin, is the moon still on the, is the flag still on the moon that they put on there?
Is the flag still on the moon that you put there?
All 6 flags are still on the moon.
And
the only thing that might destroy a flag would be a direct hit by a meteorite, or the gradual modification of the chemistry of the flag by ultraviolet radiation. Somewhere in the future the flags will disappear, but right now I think it's a pretty safe bet that all 6 of them are there.
Yeah, you know, David, I think everybody assumes that they're still standing upright.
Right.
But if you've ever seen the blast of the ascent stage, I think you'd realize that there aren't hardly any of them still standing up.
You know, at least the film that we took from Apollo 17 as we were lifting off.
That's the one we usually see.
Yeah, you could see the flag wiggle a little bit, but we didn't see it fall over. So I'm assuming it's still up.
We have a call from Joe in New York. Joe, hi.
Yes, my question is for Buzz and Harrison. My question is, why haven't we gone back to the moon? Is there anything more that we can learn there?
That's a big question. Why haven't we gone back? And we're going to talk about this through the evening.
The second part, I think the first part is the space program really was a Cold War exercise, and most everything started with missiles. And we were in a hurry to get to the moon, so we didn't build reusability into our Saturn rockets. We built just so many so that we felt for sure with this many rockets we'd be able to get there. So we didn't build into the Apollo program sustainability so that we could keep going. And shortly after our mission, there were some discussions about what the future ought to be. And there were some options for even getting to Mars by about this time. But there was not a will in the eyes of the people and in the Congress and in the President to approve this kind of a follow-on program.
Okay, Dan from Florida, hi.
Hi, how are you, gentlemen? It's certainly a pleasure to talk to you.
What's your question?
I have two questions concerning the lunar roving vehicle. Number one, how fast was it able to travel? And number two, how heavy was it so that it could withstand the zero gravity and be able to stay on the surface?
It weighed about 450 Earth pounds, and with the two crewmen on board, you'd have to add another about 650 pounds. So it stayed on the surface. It would have stayed on the surface if it had weighed an ounce. But the biggest fun with the rover was at about 10 kilometers an hour, which was its top speed over fairly level terrain. That doesn't sound like very much, but every time you hit a bump, you're off the surface for the next several meters. So that gets a little bit exciting. Gene Cernan and I had it up to about 18 kilometers an hour going downhill once, and I think we regretted it. It was a little bit too fast.
We're going to go back and continue to ask a lot of questions and learn more about the space program at that time, what was going on with it, and what the plans were for the future. Right now, should we continue to explore space? Why or why not? And we'll take more of your calls. 1-800-979-3393. Right back. The technical wizardry that has guided our space program has been nothing short of spectacular, as you just heard David Scott say, but it's very expensive. Should we keep at it? Are there higher priorities for our money? What are the risks? What are the benefits? Valerie Neal is the curator of the Department of Space History for the Air and Space Museum at the Smithsonian Institution. Dr. Neal led the development of the Smithsonian exhibition, Where Next, Columbus, and co-authored a book of essays on exploring space, same title. Valerie, nice to see you. Nice to have you with us.
Good to be here.
David Scott, we just heard say we must explore. Really? Must we explore? If so, why? Why must we explore?
We addressed that question in the exhibition at the museum and found it to be a complex of reasons. Many people think it's in our very nature to explore, that we have a primal need to be on the move, to gain more land, more power, more wealth, to conquer. And in the early years, there was a lot of talk about the conquest of space as if it were indeed part of this primal need to be on the move. We also hear a lot about it being linked to America's destiny, particularly America's destiny, because we've been a nation of explorers. We were founded on exploration, and for almost 200 years now, we have supported it as a people and as a government. But it's becoming more than America's destiny in space. I think people around the world now see exploration as a badge of leadership, something that nations do and people engage in doing because there are economic benefits, there are technology advances, there are benefits to education and general standard of living. And then fundamentally, I think we explore because it's a choice that we have within our power to make.
Where do you think we ought to go? Based on your working with this every day, should we be going to Mars? Should we put robots on Mars? Human beings, men and women, send them up to Mars, or what?
Well, as a historian, I'm more in the profession of looking backward and analyzing what we have done. As a human being, however, I tend to be an optimist and something of an adventurous. And I think that the movement out into space in our century and in our lifetimes has been a remarkable human achievement. I suspect that as human beings, we'll find it very difficult to turn our backs on that. But I think we need the right combination of circumstances, of ideals and realities of dreams and practicalities in order to make the best decision about when and where to explore.
And how to make it happen.
And how to make it happen.
Right.
And I think so far we've been using a combination of robotic explorers and human explorers. Humans are fantastic explorers on the frontiers of knowledge, but on the frontiers of space there are certain risks and difficulties and complications with people. There are also, and
we're going to explore that later, pardon the pun, with
yes.
with a NASA doctor astronaut. We've got a call coming in from Pennsylvania from Marjorie. Marjorie, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Fine. What's your question?
Well, every time we explore, we seem to exploit the places we go to. Are we going into space for scientific gain or to claim territory and natural resources?
Jack, why don't you take a shot at that?
I really think it's both. And in fact, this desire for human beings to explore are really related to our desire to survive as a species. And what Apollo did was bring the moon and Mars into our ecological niche. This is now a much broader niche in which the human species can survive. And if we're going to survive, we not only need this understanding, the scientific understanding of that niche, but we also need its resources. And indeed, the moon has shown us that may well be possible.
All right, but some people might suggest that instead of spending the, what, hundreds of billions of dollars it will take for us to, let's say, get to Mars, maybe we ought to take that same money and apply it to fixing whatever the problems are, developing our own capabilities here on Earth, instead of going out there and trying to create something out there that perhaps would be more easily and effectively done here. What's the response to that argument that's put forward?
Well, I would say that the response is that we probably could, one, it's not going to take that much money, not nearly that much, and two, it is probably something we have to do because of just the increase in the numbers of people that are going to populate this Earth,
so you're
and
saying,
the consequences of that.
All right, and you're saying we're going to actually perhaps use Mars to colonize Mars?
No, Mars is a somewhat separate case. The moon, though, becomes a very accessible part of our salvation, if you will, here on Earth. Mars is enabled as a consequence of our being able to utilize the resources of the moon in order to preserve our environment here on Earth.
Richard from California, call. Hi.
Good evening. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Very good, thank you. My question is, do you believe that we'll ever find extraterrestrial life? And I mean, isn't that what we're really going out there for?
Who wants to take a grab at that?
I don't want to take it all, but I really think we will. The chances of finding, again, niches on Mars in which very simple life forms may actually have survived since the early history of Mars, I think are very good. All of the geological reasoning that we have right now indicates that Mars had a history not unlike the Earth's in its very early, say, 1.5 billion years, and that in that time we now know that life began to evolve here on Earth, and I suspect it happened on Mars as well. Mars changed, and so life as we know it is not very, it's not a very hospitable place for life as we know it. But nevertheless, I suspect there's some little places where bacterial life may well have survived on Mars.
Sydney in Virginia, hi.
Hi, David. How are you?
Well, what's your question?
I was calling. I wanted to ask Buzz and Jack both, if offered the opportunity, would they possibly go to Mars on the mission if they had a chance to go?
If I thought we were going in the next 5 or 10 years, I would probably start training for it.
I am training for it. I'd be happy to go.
Valerie, you want to go?
I would be very interested in going myself, certainly.
Where next Columbus? It appears from this conversation to be Mars. Is there life there? Was there ever life there? Scientists are indeed looking at evidence that suggests there might have been primitive life there that Jack just mentioned billions of years ago. And we're going to explore that when we come back. What do the last 35 years of exploring space mean to us Earthlings? Watch.